Welcome to Real Talk tonight, to the Monday, the 10th of November 2025. Real Talk with our political leader, Dr. Thomson Fontaine. And as you know, every Monday evening from 8 to 9, we are tuned in with various topics where the political leader and other persons share perspectives with respect to the issues that we are faced with, whether they are social, political, economical, environmental, legal, whatever. And this is our mission. We intend to continue this program to continue to educate our people and to give them information where applicable so that they can be informed as to what is happening. So, Doc, as usual, how has it been? I know you have been out over the weekend. I mean, you are always all over the place, and sometimes some people say, I'm trying to get Doc, but I know Doc is all over the place. What has it been like for you since after the the independent season has kind of winded down a little bit? And we are generally in the festive season, because next is Christmas, and subsequent to that, we'll follow Carnival. What has been going on? Tell us. Where have
Yes,
you
well,
been?
just a good night to you, and of course to our many listeners who already tuned in to us here on Real Talk. It's a pleasure to be back on. We missed last week in the middle of the festive season, so we're very happy that we can once again be on with you. And thank you so much for being a part of our discussion tonight. Indeed, as we rolled away from independence and so on, we continued our work on the ground because I think it's very important as a party that we continue to engage our people across Dominica. And I must say that these engagements are going extremely well. In fact, I was listening to the radio today and I heard people calling to say, oh, Workers' Party, they're doing nothing. They're not on the ground. They're not. And I'm like, and I'm just smiling. We don't always publicize where we're going. We don't always, make a big issue out of it. But let me assure our supporters that we are doing the work that is necessary, including our candidates, potential candidates, our caretakers. We are on the ground. There are those candidates that are working extremely hard in their constituencies every single day. And it's particularly on the weekend, we try to ramp things up. And every now and then I get invited to one of those constituencies. So last weekend, I was very happy to be invited to the Silver Lake constituency. And I must say how I was tremendously surprised at just the sheer number of young people in the Silver Lake community. Because I remember in the 2014 election, I went there a few times with Josh, who was the candidate at the time. And I went with him on the ground there, a few times. But 10 years later, I am just shocked at the number of young people in particular, because when we were there then, there were not this many young people, but you have just scores of young people, and I'm just hearing their story. But what moved me most, is the fact that so many of them have sad stories. So many of them are saying that they have no work, and these are young men in particular who are anxious to work. They want help. Some of them are good mechanic. They can do mechanical work. We have a few of them who are good at with their hands and so on. So we just want something to do. We just want to be able to take care, of our parents. Some of them say they want to take care of their parents, and so on. But one of the things that really moved me, man, is just this tremendous, firstly, the large number, which I was completely shocked at, but also the overwhelming majority of them are not employed. And that is very, very sad. And I think it's something that is echoed across Dominica. And that's the reason why it is very important that the young people here, that we have a plan with the 10 pillars, because within the 10 pillars is an entire pillar for the young people, and that is to create employment opportunities. And as I assured the young people of Silver Lake on the weekend, we are there for them. Our aim, once we get into government, is to create opportunities that will allow them to work, to put their skills to work. In the meantime, we're going to see what we can do for them and how we can help. But ultimately, our appeal to them was help us, put us in office, and once we're there, we'll be able to, reciprocate and be able to create the opportunities, because we do have a plan for job creation. We do have a plan that is targeted at the young people in particular. And so it was a very exciting time to be able to share. Also very sad as well, because you hit the idea that so many young people are not having opportunities in this country. It's really unfortunate that so many of our young people are unemployed. And that to me is something, an image I can't get out of my head. The stories I keep replaying over and over, some of them I'm not even able to share publicly, based on what we heard. But it is really very, very discouraging when you see the number of young people and the way that they have been impacted by just this jobless situation in this country.
Yes, and it's commendable that you as a political leader of the United Workers' Party, you are out here interacting and feeling the pain of others, sharing, what is it that our party can do when we attain the office, let's say when we attain governance of this country, and the many sentiments that have been shared, all over Dominica. It's really it aches, and sometimes some people say we are not doing anything. I don't know why they would come to that conclusion, because politics is hard, yes, and we have been in the doldrums for the past 24 years, and by now, anybody with that courage would have given up. You have seen us even more fortified, even more showing resilience and ready to fight on behalf of the people. And so all we need is a little encouragement. We cannot come on the radio, on social media, and tell people of the strategies that we are using to capture voters. And in fact, let me just tell you, in Roseau Central, quite a lot of work is being done, but we don't have to echo that. We don't have to tell people what we do. In respect to the confirmation, we are doing well. We are doing what we have to do. And we are encouraging persons to get confirmed. Calls are coming in. People want to know what is happening. How can we be of assistance to them with respect to information? What do they need? What is required for them to get confirmed? And we are there. So all we're asking people is to be as patient with us. We are not saying that we cannot do a little more, but for 24 years we have been doing it, and we have been in opposition, and we are still alive fighting on your behalf. What you have to now demonstrate as a people is show your resilience. By even if it's the government that confirm you, it doesn't mean that you have to vote the government. You have to put them outside. They have had you suffering for many years, and you just cannot do it. So, Doc, yes, while some people I may agree that we need to do more, but it shouldn't be that as though people want us to come out in the public domain and tell the world how it is that we are strategizing. You agree or disagree?
I agree. And so also, I think for our supporters out there, I know they mean well. But when you sit back or when you call the radio and say, "Oh, United Workers' Party, they're doing nothing. They're not visible. We're not seeing them," and so on. These are people, some of them from overseas. I think a better approach would be to, pick up the phone or go online, get in touch with us and say, how can we help you? How can we be of assistance to you to be able to get the message across? Don't just say we're not doing anything, because we are. Like my heart goes off. To the candidates and the caretakers who, as you said, have been toiling for 25 years. It is not easy to be out of government for 25 years, and you have to keep going. You have to keep getting up every morning and on the weekends or in the afternoons and going back on the ground and trying to talk and convince people. It's a very daunting task, because you've been so unsuccessful, largely because the government has been stealing those elections all of those years. So I am very much encouraged by the fact that our caretakers and our potential candidates, they're willing to continue in that struggle. So what we need from those who are criticizing is just to reach out and say, how can we help? I think that would be a lot better for us, rather than just, say, we are doing nothing. We are not, I heard someone say today, for example, that we are not even getting people out to confirm. And
That's far from the truth. That's far from the truth.
We are organizing, we are arranging for people. We are finding out firstly whether or not they have their IDs. Those with IDs, we're encouraging them actively to go out and register. We are discussing even having, transportation arranged and so on. So we are doing all of those things, and so I just want our supporters. Like I said, I know they mean well, but I think you help us by asking us how you can be of help to us, especially those of us who are overseas, and not on the ground, who cannot be there physically on the ground with us in Dominica. And for those of you who are on the ground in Dominica, we are in fact going around on the ground. So just reach out to us. If you have a free weekend, and so on, and you want to come with us, we encourage this support. You can also do that. There are ways that you can contribute, and not just expect just the few of us in the executive to do all of the work. I mean, that task of removing this government is about all of us acting together, working together. And so we want very much to encourage people to help us, be with us, offer your support to come on the ground and help us. If you cannot come on the ground and help us, send in some dollars that can help, so that we can pay organized transportation. We can do what we have to do. I think that is the kind of effort that we need. And quite frankly, just this useless criticism is not helping anybody. Okay, our aim is to remove this government, and we have to organize ourselves to do it. We have people who are working in a thankless task, in a thankless job, making the sacrifices. Those of us who want to help in that process, we have open arms. We're welcoming you. But we need the encouragement, and we need you to be a lot more supportive than simply reactionary, simply, being critical.
Yes, and just before we shift gears, because the primary focus tonight, I will tell the audience exactly what we're going to discuss. But just before you do, we shift gears and move to the substantive part of our discussion. I know some time ago you revealed some figures. You had the data with respect to the various election cycles, and we saw how, with all the effort of the government, although they have all the largest on their side and they inject so much funds into winning elections, we see where the margins are small, and it means that people can do better, and that is where we need the people to ramp up and come out in large numbers and to vote this government. Also, it is doable. So the point is, while we are actually putting the data before you and letting you know how close it is, you should be even more encouraged to come out and to get confirmed, and to ensure that you're on the electors list, and to ensure when the time is called, when the electoral bell is rung, then you can demonstrate once and for all that this government is no more. So, Doc, I mean, I am happy that you have been appealing for people to be encouraging us with the work forward, but they themselves must do a little more, because what we saw with the figures is that it is doable. This government can be no more once.
Oh, absolutely. No, you're absolutely correct. So when you look at the numbers, the margins are very, very thin, very, very close. I mean, we lost the last election, even the 2019 elections, where we only won 3 seats. We lost by a combined total of 965 votes. That is easily reversible. And in fact, I'm of the firm conviction that we have already overcome that margin, based on the response that we're getting on the ground and based on the enthusiasm that people have to remove this regime. After all, the majority of Dominicans are not doing well. I just told you about these young men and women in Silver Lake. Right. They only want jobs. They only want to work, and they have zero opportunities. So they must be thinking to themselves that, hey, why should we keep supporting a government that has been unable to provide opportunities for us? And hence the reason why we must put our trust and confidence in the United Workers' Party, Team Dominica, because we have a focus on job creation. We have a focus on turning the economy around. We have a focus on getting our young people engaged once more, has been the driving force in our society. So we have that focus, and that's the reason why, it's a very compelling message that we have for the young people. And that's the reason why they're coming on board in the numbers, and we are very, very, very thankful for that.
Yes, and so it is now right, and now there's a really good chit chat before the substantive matter. So let us just say, people, that tonight we are going to discuss the situation in the Caribbean with respect to elections. For the past couple of months, we have been hearing of elections in certain jurisdictions in the Caribbean, and as recently as last week, we heard the pronouncement of an election to take place in December 1st in St. Lucia. But let me just give a background that's before Dr. Thomson Fontaine comments or makes any reference to the topic at hand. So we'll be looking at the situation of elections in the Caribbean, and we will be well. I don't know if we're going to speculate, but Dr. Fontaine will be actually looking at, maybe even ask, when he's asked why is that happening, probably may have some answers for us. But let me just say, sometime in May 2025, early this year, we saw the United National Congress in Trinidad and Tobago, led by Prime Minister Kamala Prasad. She's won over the former Prime Minister, Mr. Keith Rowley, and his regime. They're all out, and now Kamala Prasad is now leading the Trinidad government with her United National Congress Party. And you know that some time ago too, you've been hearing about Venezuela and Guyana, they have been in dispute for many years, but even more pronounced now. And you've heard about the U.S. presence in the Southern Caribbean, and also that concerns the Venezuelans and many persons in the region. And you have been hearing a call for peace. And Kamala Prasad is insisting that, look, we have to fight the drug lords, we have to fight the drugs in the Caribbean. And so she is one who supports the U.S. being in the waters, and the actions that they are about to take is being supported by Trinidad Prime Minister. And you see many criticisms, and you've heard many criticisms by other Caribbean leaders, and probably some of them are calling for peace. But Venezuela is on high alert, and anytime a strike may be imminent, it may not be. But as far as the Americans are concerned, they are talking about fighting narco trafficking in the Caribbean, whether it's the south of the Caribbean or the northern Caribbean. Some time ago, you heard also too, Honorable Ralph Gonzalez, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He has been leading his party since 1994. Since 1994. And Ralph Gonzalez has announced elections for the 27th of November, 2025. And so he has been Prime Minister for the past 25 years, since 2001. Then he won in 2001, 2005, 2010, 2015, and 2020, So he's now calling, he's leading the Unity Labour Party, and he has now called for fresh elections. So Vincentians will be going to the polls on the 27th of November, 2025. Just last week, we heard from the St. Vincent Prime Minister, Honorable Philip J. Pierre, that obviously St. Lucians will be going to the polls on December 1st, 2025, and he has, actually, presented he's actually informed the president that he has dissolved the parliament, and the writs for election have been issued, and so St. Lucians will be going to the polls on December 1st, 2025. Doc, what do you make of all of this? Because it seems to me, or it appears to many persons that there is a wave of election pronouncements taking place. It has already been settled in Trinidad and Tobago. Very soon later this month, we'll be hearing what happened in St. Vincent. And subsequent to that, early in December, we'll be hearing what happened in St. Lucia. Are you making any sense out of what is happening right now?
Well, it is very interesting. And in particular, St. Lucia, the Prime Minister of St. Lucia actually called the election almost a whole year in advance. Elections could have been called up to October of next year. All right. So, the fact that he called the election almost a year, basically 11 months in advance, I think it talks to the situation that is occurring in the Caribbean. And St. Lucia is, I think, when we can take some very important lessons from, given the similarities of the leadership style that we have in those two countries. The fact that CBI in Dominica and the CIP program in St. Lucia, you have allegations of mismanagement along the lines that we have in Dominica for our CBI program. We have a youth problem in St. Lucia, again, youth unemployment, major problem there. You also have huge crime situation, a lot of social problems. So there is a lot of what is going on in St. Lucia that we can look at and say, hey, That is reflective of Dominica. And the fact that, that the prime minister chose to call an election a whole 11 months in advance says a lot. And then when you think of the case of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where Ralph Gonzalez, he went for the term, the term of his 5-year term, but he's making a bid for his sixth term, you know, as the prime minister. He's been in office for over 20 years. And so, what you see, and you made reference to the elections in Trinidad. I believe that what we are seeing in the Caribbean is a wave of change. And I would not be surprised if on the 27th of November, we have a new government in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and similarly a new government in St. Lucia on December 1st, because it does appear as if that there is a sentiment that you can pick up on that is for the Caribbean region, that in a lot of ways, economic growth within the region has been stifled. You have mounting social problems. You have a lot of allegations of mismanagement by those in authority. And you get the sense that the populations of those countries are really fed up of the leaders and are looking to turn over, put in place new leaders and see if the Caribbean can get some new direction. And that is exactly what we need at this time, especially here in Dominica. We need a new direction. We need a move away from what has obtained over the past 25 years. And, we believe that we offer, the United Workers' Party, Team Dominica offers a new, different and better way for the people of Dominica. But it is very, insightful as you look at the behavior of those governments. And when you look, we try very hard not to interfere in the affairs of these countries. So we have been very respectful in terms of not trying to comment or not trying to actively interfere. But you can tell from what you are hearing, especially coming out of St. Vincent and now St. Lucia, you can tell that the people are just waiting to get to the polls, to make those kinds of changes. And then I heard, some very unfortunate comments by the Prime Minister of Gonzales, very derogatory comments that he made about the Kalinagos, the black Kalinagos of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I don't know if you heard it.
No,
extremely. I'm not even going to repeat it on air. But very derogatory comments that he made about a particular group of people. And you wonder why it is that the Prime Minister feels compelled to make those kinds of statements about the Kalinagos. And so, he's been taken to task for it, as rightly he should be in his country. But I believe that there is that wave that we're seeing, that people have said, hey, we are fed up, we are tired of these administrations, and now is the time for change. So I think it's very interesting. It's very interesting to see, it's very interesting to see that is happening, and the potential for change in the Caribbean. So for us in Dominica, it's very exciting because you're beginning to sense the wave. You're seeing that, the dominoes are beginning to fall, and it's a very exciting time, indeed.
Yes, indeed. And if you notice, for the past 3 election cycles in St. Lucia, what we have had is a change of the guard. St. Lucians go to the poll and they don't act as one person saying is they don't really play at the polls. Once you're messing around, they take you out and they give each party their time. Once you're forming the poll, out you go, bring in the party again, and it's sold. So therefore, you have that kind of of respect for the electorate. The governance has to be directed at the people. Failure for the policies of the government to direct at the people, the St. Lucians will show you, well, look, you will not continue. Someone else needs to have a 5 years. You'll be out. Go and do your homework and come back fresh. That is the kind of election that we admire. Notwithstanding that, we have seen too, though, while we have not had, well, some people say elections may be close in Dominica as well, but I let you know that general elections is constitutional in Dominica 2027, and so there's enough time to actually have the confirmation process go on, which is about 1 year, that it should end in 2026. And then, we could have general elections constitutionally due in 2027. But yeah, what? In St. Vincent, interestingly, when Rav Gonzalez took over in 2001, the only time he called elections early was in 2005, 1 year earlier. And from 2010, when he won in 2010, he called it in 2015, then he called it in 2020. So you could see the pattern of election cycles in St. Lucia, in St. Vincent, has been the 5-year cycle. In Dominica, for us, our election cycle has moved from a 5-year cycle to a 2-year cycle, even 1.5-year cycle, and that's very bad. And just before you comment, one thing that is notable about the elections that have been held in the Caribbean, all of the Caribbean islands, right, they do have what they call voter ID card, 1 vote per person. And in Dominica, after our post-independence era or history, we still haven't had a chance to be successful with our voter ID cards. And that is why this time around with the confirmation process, we are saying, look, give the confirmation process a chance to be completed, where that every elector will have his or her ID card, voter ID card, and that in itself will be 1 vote per person based on the identity of that person. And so, yes, while elections are going on in the Caribbean, the difference with us is that we still do not vote with a voter ID card. Your comments?
Yeah, that is one of the important differences between Dominica and, say, St. Lucia and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. They do have voter ID cards there, but also we do not have the same misconduct that we see in Dominica. For example, regardless of what you think of Ralph Gonzalez, he does not import voters into St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He does not, manipulate the voting process, right? And that's the reason why for the past 2 election cycles, he has just narrowly won, and as if feeling that a lot of people believe now with this time, he will go. Similarly for St. Lucia. St. Lucia has changed. In fact, Alan Shastney, who is now trying to get back into office, only spent a 5-year term. The United Workers' Party got into office in 2019, 2020, during the pandemic. And then in 2024, there was a change of government, because the people, as you said, the people of St. Lucia, they vote on issues. They are not very tolerant of governments that are not bringing progress. And that is a good thing. And that's what we are saying. That's what we should have in Dominica. A populace that is prepared to send government packing when they don't perform. And we have just this enormous evidence of the non-performance of our government. And really, they should have been kicked to the curb a long time ago. But they've been able to maintain themselves in office through all of what we have well chronicled in the past, bringing people in to vote, the manipulation of the voting list. I was told about this one gentleman who voted 3 separate places. And so, just all of these things that we see going on, these irregularities that we have, that we've tried to address through the courts and have been struck down, and just the frustration that we have, So it is very much interesting to note that is what we have. But we are trying our best in Dominica now with that confirmation process. We are hoping that at least we can get a clean list. Because if you do have a clean list, a lot of the issues that we've had in the past will fade away. But even then, even with that notion of a clean list, we are seeing the behavior of this government, how they are even now convoluting the whole process of confirmation by removing the need for birth certificate, by making it easier for persons living overseas to confirm that those who are living here in Dominica and those who have to endure the rule of this Labour Party. So, it's a lot of issues that we're having here in Dominica. And sometimes you sit back and you say, boy, you just wish, the situation was as it is, say, in St. Lucia and in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where you do believe that when you go to the polls, you have a fair chance and that the best team normally wins. You kind of get that sense. We don't have that in Dominica. It's something that we have to strive for. And that's the reason why, so as we discuss a change in this country, a new look, we have to look at term limits. We have to look at fixed dates for elections. We have to look at probably a smaller constituencies. We have to make some major changes in the electoral process so that we can have a system of government that every single Dominican can be proud of. But more importantly, it will give the power to the people to decide what kind of government they want. And no government will be able to rig and steal and do what we're saying that has been the case here in Dominica.
Yes, and interesting. And just as you talk about fixed election date, someone was just pointing out the fact that, I think we was looking to a fixed date for elections. And, some people have the view that, Ralph Gonzalez may not really make it again. I mean, the last time he won was just by one seat. And I think Ralph Gonzalez should understand that, sometimes it's time. I'm not talking as a Vincent Jean, I'm not talking for them, but I know Vincent Jean believe that he's done what he had to do. He did well for his country. And let me just applaud Ralph, being hearing about CBI, and Ralph Gonzalez has never, he said he will not sell his sovereignty, and he has maintained this. And St. Vincent has been sustained otherwise in other areas, other sectors like agriculture, tourism, and other areas to sustain its economy. And they never really partake in any CBI. But we are coming to this. But Doc, there is a pattern now. It seems to me that there is the word disunity among CARICOM heads or Caribbean heads, because you see what is looming over Venezuela there, an imminent strike anytime the U.S. may strike. But as you know, in the Southern Caribbean, they are conducting strikes on, narco trafficking. And in recent times, we've heard that the U.S. has had some bombardment, on certain vessels moving about in the Southern Caribbean. And it is professed that, or it is claimed that probably people moving drugs from Venezuela to the other parts of the Caribbean and subsequently to the United States of America. But Doc, it appears that, CARICOM or Caribbean leaders are divided as to the way they speak with respect to, particularly the Albanesians, those who are tied to Venezuela. I know our country is tied to Venezuela as being part of ALBA because of the oil deal, obviously, that we get. And other nations. And it seems to me that the Americans may not be favored by all. And we hear people preaching peace, but they really want to take side and tell the Americans they are wrong or not wrong. And it seems to me that they may be divided on that. But, you've seen Kamala Prasad insistence on that the Americans should stay and to do the job, because she needs to clean up her backyard, she needs to clean up her country, because it doesn't really do the drug trafficking, doesn't really do her country good. And so, she's in support of the U.S. in what they do. Do you get a sense too that really sitting Caribbean heads are not really with what is happening in the U.S.? Are they for or against? Are they speaking? What is the situation?
It's very interesting when you look at the dynamic within CARICOM, and as you said, the posture of the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago clearly on the side of the United States of America, and her thing is simple. Trinidad and Tobago is awash with guns and cocaine and drugs, and the drug trade is one of the main reasons why you have the situation that exists in Trinidad and Tobago. And they don't grow the cocoa plant in Trinidad. All of that is being imported into the country. And so her whole thing is that, okay, that's an opportunity for us to really start to get a hold of our crime situation in the country. Because if we're able to keep out those drugs, keep out those warlords out of those drug lords out of Trinidad and Tobago, that might have a cooling effect on the crime situation. So for her as a prime minister, she feels that she's justified in supporting a push by the United States to go after the narco traffickers in the region. And who can blame her for that? On the other hand, you have a number of Caribbean leaders who have benefited tremendously from ALBA. Because, let us not forget that right when Chavez introduced ALBA in 2018, 2019, you had oil prices of $180, $170 a barrel. And you remember the tremendous hardship that was being experienced by those countries. And Chavez stepped in with a deal to not only provide cheap oil, but even to give subsidies, to give loans in support of that. And that made a huge difference in a number of economies, including in Dominica, although I should quickly add, we did not get the full benefit of the ALBA because the pass-through that was expected and the pass-through that was negotiated by Chavez never really happened, to us in the sense that a lot of those profits and monies went elsewhere, but the idea was a good one. So you have those countries that are saying, well, here it was, Venezuela stood with us in our time of need. And you remember as well that Albert came at a critical time when there was some talk around the free trade of the Americas. All right, there was a discussion around, the Caribbean Basin Initiative being revisited and having this free trade pact with the U.S. Albert, for the most part, took that discussion away. So we never moved into any free trade pact with the United States. So for some of these Caribbean leaders, they're thinking, well, their allegiance should be to Venezuela. And now you have the added situation of countries like Dominica, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, where because of the trading passports, because of the trading citizenship, and the pressure that has been brought to bear by the United States, they're saying, well, that's maybe an opportunity for them to probably side with Venezuela against the US, But I think that is a losing proposition. I think taking sides in this conflict may not be the wisest way to go. I believe at the end of the day, countries should always have their best interest. And whenever you're choosing sides or you are deciding where to go or how to walk these fine diplomatic lines, that at the end of the day, it always has to be what is best for your country and what is best for the people of the country. So I don't see taking a stance against the U.S. is necessarily helpful to the region, especially given the mood that we've seen that the Trump administration is in, and especially considering that we have unfinished business. I mean, this CBI issue is not going to go away. It is not going to go away. We are going to have a situation where we are going to see some kind of pushback if the Caribbean countries go too far in the support for Venezuela.
Yes, and just as I read certain articles and you look at the news, and the U.S. doesn't have to even ask any of the countries to use its geographical, space, not the airport or anything, because they have enough hardware, military hardware. They could use their ships and do their own landing and takeoff and everything. So they do not even need a strip in the Caribbean. They can do what they have to do. Really advocate for peace, but they know what they know best. And, somebody say, leave Venezuela alone. The U.S. must leave Venezuela alone. That is one's opinion. But they know what they know. But my take is that, will there be repercussions for the Caribbean countries if they do not really support the U.S.? Because, at the end of the quote-unquote, the U.S. always seems to have something in its back pocket that we need. Notwithstanding, they have been absent. And someone said, in fact, someone said on a text, according to me, so this is a lovely discussion, but we must admit that the U.S. for some time has neglected the Caribbean and caused some of these countries to favor Venezuela and even China, because these countries, the whole dollar diplomacy with China coming with their road and belt initiative, and we fall for that, and long-term loans and so, and with this current situation in the Alba nations, where Venezuela was able to come and to, as you rightly said, try to brush away NAFTA and try to bring in spread the Bolivarian ring out in the Caribbean. So, but do you think there is any repercussion for us as a small island states? By the
US? Absolutely. I think the nature of the unfolding conflict is such that it is not just limited between the United States and Venezuela. It is very clear that there is some intervention now by Russia and also by Beijing, by the Chinese. The Chinese are standing firmly on the side of the Venezuelans. The Chinese and the Russians, they have taken sides in this conflict, and they're throwing their weight solidly behind Venezuela. So that makes it a little bit more complicated, because you have a situation where other Caribbean countries that have sided with Beijing are now saying, well, okay, can we really stand with America and now against Beijing? And I'm convinced, although I don't have necessarily the evidence of it, but just knowing the way these things work, I would not be surprised if there is pressure from the United States on these Caribbean countries to publicly side with the United States against those countries, and that's probably putting the countries in a bigger bind, diplomatically. What should they do? Because if you speak out, for example, against Venezuela, then you are speaking out against China, who probably for some countries are the biggest benefactor. They're the ones providing support and resources to those countries. So do you want to take the chance? And I'm thinking specifically of Dominica. Do you want to take the chance to be seen to be going up against Beijing, against China? And that is something I believe that there must be a lot of discussion, a lot of back and forth on this. And at the end of the day, which side do you choose? And given, I said, given the mood that the Trump administration is in, I don't think they will take too kindly to countries that throw their weight fully behind Venezuela. And that's probably the reason why you're hearing a number of those governments talking about, hey, let's keep the country as a zone of peace, saying that is almost like a kind of a neutral position. All right.
Right.
If you continue to maintain that mantra, let us maintain the Caribbean as a zone of peace, then you don't have to take any sides. You don't have to go to the side of Venezuela and Beijing and Russia against the Americans. So probably that's the wisest thing to do in the circumstances.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, at the end of the exercise, they would know what is best, and I hope that collectively Caribbean heads can at least sit down again, have a summit, of an emergency meeting, and take a decision and come out strong with a position, and stop pussyfooting with respect to mixed signals as to what is happening in the Southern Caribbean. I believe that would be fair for all citizens in the Caribbean, and we would like to know our position in Dominica. And I agree with you, not just about let the region be a region of peace, because we have been talking about peace in Dominica, and this Labour Party government has not been showing any way for peace in this country. Instead, they continue to harass political opponents and to ensure that they are jailed and will go as far as spending enough money to jail them. That's just some of the attitudes that these other countries have, the socialist countries have. Like Russia, obviously, the Putin regime, you see what is happening. The political opponents have been either poisoned or been chastised or been thrown into jail. And some Caribbean leaders seem to be having some of these traits that they want to actually, bring. We are not accustomed to this. We are accustomed to open democracy. We are accustomed to our people, voting a government that they deserve. We are not used to being bribed. People should go to the polls and elect a government of their choice, and should dispose of government when we feel that the government is not working in our best interest. Instead, we have in our situation like in Dominica, where this government seems to be imposing itself on the people, because many times the people have said no to them, but they continue to impose themselves by cheating. And this is really not good. This is not going well. And that is why today we're in a situation where we do not even have ID cards. And even with the confirmation process, even the ordinary man who is not employed, or most of them are not employed, and cannot even buy a little breakfast sometimes, cannot even buy a lunch or have a dinner, or may not just have one meal for the day. And that meal may not even have all of the nutrient content that is required for nourishing the body. You are telling that man to go and look for a passport to go and confirm he's already on the list. And that is cruel. That's cruel, and that is not far from cruelty. And I will say that I will reiterate to the Electoral Commission that they must reinstate the birth certificate with the picture ID and the affidavit of identity. Doc, your take on this one?
Yeah, it is very unfortunate that we are where we are in Dominica, because as you rightly pointed out, we have a regime in this country that is taking a leaf out of these repressive regimes. I mean, I was thinking of it, I say, but when you think of St. Lucia, when you think of St. Vincent and Grenadines, when you think of Grenada, you don't have the same kind of hostility of government towards the opposition parties. I don't know of any current leaders within the OECS or within, let's just focus on the Windward Islands, who have been thrown in jail, whose liberties have been taken away from them, and so on. None. But we have that in Dominica. The kind of excesses that we've seen with bringing people in and having people vote 2-3 times, having people vote on other people's names, just making a mockery of our electoral system. I don't see that happening in other countries around us. So we have a very unique situation in Dominica. We really do have in office a rogue government. That's what we have. And sometimes you long for the tranquility and the peace that we see in the other Caribbean countries or the islands that surround us. But that is something that we have to fight. And that's the reason why, and all the more reason why the people of Dominica should reject this Labour Party government. That's all the more reason why we have to stand up together and say enough is enough. That you cannot continue mistreating the opposition. You cannot continue believing that you somehow own this country, that no other person can rule this country or can be the government of this country, that you will do as you please. You will take the resources of the country. You'll give it to whomever you want. You will take the billions of dollars of the country's resources and give it to a foreigner in Dubai. We should not be accepting that. When you think of the ills of this government, when you think of what they have done, the lack of transparency, the lack of accountability, the focus on trying to jail opposition leaders, to steal elections, and this litany of wrongs that they've done against the people, the way that they've condemned the people to poverty, the way that all of the resources spread about amongst a few in government, a prime minister on a $12,000 salary, building 3-4 mansions and have this incredible amount of wealth. When you think about those things, and you think about the fate and the fact that, as we spoke earlier, about the young people not having hope, and you have this contrast, in terms of the leadership, in terms of the way and the direction of this country, you must say that this is the time when the people of Dominica must stand up together against this. We must say no to those excesses. We must say no to a government that turns around and gives the resources of the country to a foreigner, who then turns around and gives the government as what they wish and what they please. You must say no to a government that says it has a housing program, puts people into a house, but does not give them ownership of this house. You must say no to that. You must say no to a government that has maintained a red clinic that tells people it is easier or better to come to me, even when God is not answering your prayers, to come to me and I'll give you, as against how can we operate and get the work for you. You must say no to a government that will destroy the agriculture sector, upon which 70% of the population relied originally. You must say no to this government. So I am hoping that in all of this, and as we have those discussions, and as we meet people on the ground, and as we talk to people, I'm hoping that the people of Dominica will say, man, enough is enough. We've had enough. We cannot continue living this way. We can't continue our lives on this path, that we have to send the message to this government. And so, as far as I'm concerned, the elections can come quickly enough, because I believe that the people of Dominica are already at this stage from the vibe that we're getting on the ground. And just also, and if you don't believe me, so if people don't believe that this vibe is real, look at the behavior, look at the cowardly behavior of this government, even in terms of trying to already mess up the system of confirmation, hoping that they can get an unfair advantage. That is not a confident government.
No.
That is not a government that knows that they're going to be re-elected. That is a government that is filled with desperation. That's an increasingly desperate government that we have operating in Dominica, and you can see it by their actions. So we should not be taking this lightly either, okay? And that's the reason why our message to the Dominican public is to join us. Let us unite together and fight this evil which faces us, because that's what it is. A government that will go to those lengths, all right, that will try everything in areas, for example, where they know that we have a lot of support. They will not put a confirmation center, hoping that our people in those areas do not get confirmed, and so they will not get a chance to vote. when you have this deliberate attempt by this government, all right, to mess up the process, then it tells you that we have to fight harder, that the people of Dominica has to come together and fight this beast, and we have to do it in a way that will send a very clear message to this government that, yeah, we are fed up, that we are tired, and that we know exactly what they're up to.
Oh, yes, and well said. And, it's interesting that, you have a man who is at the helm, the head of the country, leading the government, and, he wants to interfere with the whole electoral process. And if someone say, well, I'm going to see Mr. Skerritt to tell him to tell the commissioners, well, that's already wrong. He's not in charge of elections. He has nothing to do with elections. If someone has to talk about elections, this person needs to visit, or whoever is concerned, whether it's a group, an organization, or some other business persons, they need to visit the Electoral Commission and have a sit with the commissioners and to give advice. I mean, you cannot instruct them, but you can have a discussion with them and to go to them and tell them, look, this is what would be a fair game. Not the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is not in charge of elections, and we should never do that. But let me just read some of the comments that we have been getting, from our viewers there. He said, Doc, one person said, Doc, the vibe is real. And one person is of the view that Dominicans have let off their guard and let, one man just take over their whole life. And that is so wrong. And one person is saying we need to go all over the constituencies in broad daylight and gather the people. Well, for sure, caller and viewer, we are doing this. We are all over. We have what they call the community engagements, where we are actually preaching as a party the social contract that we will have with them as a government. The 10 pillars, we have been going around. We have done 8 to 9 constituencies already. We had a pause because of the independence season, and rightfully so. I hope by next week, Thursday, we can resume with Rosa Central being at the helm. This is what is going to be arranged. So then we are doing this, and we are meeting people one-on-one at the constituency level, and we are discussing with them. Our priority now, too, though, is to get people confirmed. The Labour Party would have liked that we do not get people confirmed because they feel they have an advantage. No way, Labour Party. You all are not coming back there. People are confirming every day. People are interested. I just saw somebody saying there, tomorrow I'm going to confirm. So this is someone I know is in my constituency. And a lot of persons have been very, very responsive to the whole fact that, look, they are going to be confirmed and they are putting themselves in gear to do so. So I'm amazed and I'm very appalled by the number of calls on a day-to-day basis that are coming in and persons asking and inquiring where should they go to get confirmed. It's very encouraging, Doc. And I know, this is something that we have been on for many years. We have said we would have preferred that we had a complete registration. By and large, we don't get it, but that should not frustrate us. We should continue to be steadfast, to be resilient, and we need to exercise good judgment and to go out there and get confirmed, because if we fail to do so, we'll be struck off the electors list. That is what we will not want that happen to us. And okay, somebody saying there, my people, we have to pray because we don't know we don't know is older than, what is it? We don't know it is older than us. What we don't know is older than us. What we don't know is older than us. Oh, what happened to my 4 eyes tonight? Yeah. I personally am about the development of the country, not politics. I'm in agreement with that person, Doc, that we have to look at the bigger picture, which is the country. And that is why you, as the leader of the United Workers' Party, you have proposed with your team the 10-pillar plan, which of course will bring some economic restoration to us. And I see it as one of the things that will really revamp the economy, whether we look at the short term, the medium term, and the long term. This has its place, but for sure the 10-pillar plan will in some way will actually spin around this economy and have Dominicans benefit a better, decent life of living. Somebody saying that we are regressing back in time, where if you were poor, you could not vote. And that reminds me very much, Doc, about a book that I read, Running for Freedom. And sometime ago in America, they instituted what they call an exam. knowing that you had persons who were illiterate and could not have sat an exam, and they had, they introduced an exam. So imagine they introduce an exam for a man who is illiterate to do. You know that it is just another way of disenfranchising you from the polls. So it looks like we are regressing that they want to use a basic ID that we have. And interestingly, when you get confirmed, because I myself, I'm confirmed, they ask you questions that you as if that you're going to get a birth certificate. So why now? Why not reinstate the birth certificate? Because they're asking your mother's name, your father's name, as if it's a birth certificate you're going to get. So why now? Why not reinstate the birth certificate and you get all the information of who's my mother, who's my father, and the date of birth? So we are calling for that. But Doc, I know we are out of time, but are running out of time. But let me ask you though, if you were sitting as the Prime Minister right now of Dominica, and you were participating in CARICOM meeting, heads of government meeting, what would be the advice would you give them, read the situation and the standoff right now between the US and Venezuela? As we say, it's a bigger picture than that, but as we know it now, the Americans in our waters actually fighting down narco trafficking, and that is what the agenda is for now. But if you were sitting at CARICOM, at the CARICOM level, what advice as Prime Minister would you take to CARICOM?
Well, I would certainly support the focus on eradicating the menace of drug trafficking, because even here in Dominica, we're not immune. I mean, just a few weeks ago, over $40 million worth of drugs were found here in Dominica, cocaine. We don't produce cocaine in Dominica. We've seen the impact it has had on our young people. So any effort to reduce that volume of traffic and to get a hold of the thing, I would certainly encourage. Beyond that, I would really hope that the region does not see a violent confrontation. My hope is still that with the pressure that has been placed on Maduro, he will eventually give up and probably resign and spare his country any kind of attack. But I believe that at the end of the day, CARICOM must be in the interest of what is best for its people. And if I were to advise him, I would say, well, what in that whole scenario, what is best for the people of the region? I think the resounding result would be that we do not see an escalation into war, but that this dispute is resolved as amicably as possible. But more importantly, that we support the efforts, to combat drug trafficking in the region.
Yes. So another comment there is it's more than time for them to go. One person is saying there, how can you spend or pay a guy over $500,000, where really $750,000 for recommendations for Dominica's reform process? Yet the majority of what he proposed, the majority of it was thrown into the garbage. I mean, this is absurd, and really it's just a matter of just showing that he wanted to do something because he had promised it, but it wasn't in good faith. But we really want to thank you, Doc, for the work that you do, and to the many persons who have been supportive of the programs. And by the way, it would be remiss of me not to read this text from a young person again. So tell Dr. Thomson Fontaine he's a breath of fresh air for us. And I can tell you straight, he's the man that we can work with, and tell him, don't worry. We will be contacting him because one person has his number already, and we'll be calling him anytime to have a discussion with us. We are rallying the young persons to get registered, and we are echoing, like you all are echoing, that it's time that the electoral office open new registration, because they are actually violating the very fabric of our society, whereby they're trying to disenfranchise us from being part of the electoral process. So yes, Electoral Commission, you have heard a young person say, you need now to stop violating the very registrations of Electors Act and get to continuous registration where persons who have attained the age of 18 to have them registered, and for the first-time voters to register so that they can act accordingly. So, Doc, knowing that we've touched on a number of things tonight, what are your parting words to us?
Well, I just want to probably end with this last text that you read, from this young person. I'm excited to hear from this young person, because at the end of the day, I mean, while they're working on behalf of the country, I think deep down, is that desire to see our young people get a better deal than they're now getting. A lot of the motivation, a lot of what motivates me, a lot of what gets me out of bed in the mornings and to go on the ground and to do this work, a lot of it has to do with the young people of this country. Because I believe that they've been given a bad and raw deal by this government, and that we can reverse it. We can reverse it. We want to see our young people working. We want to see our young people being energized. We want to see our young people being able to do everything that is possible as young people, to build their futures, to earn a living, to make money in this country. I want to see young people be able to earn good, decent money here in Dominica, so that they can build their families and have good futures right here in our country. And a lot of my motivation is that, and I believe that the young people are listening to us, they're hearing us, and there's no doubt in my mind that they will give us that opportunity to work with them and to lead the way, because we are focused. We have that laser focus on job creation, a laser focus on making the lives of the young people in particular better. I have no apologies so in saying that I, as the leader of the United Workers' Party, Team Dominica, is committed like the rest of the team to create wealth in this country, to create opportunities for young people, to put money to people's pockets, so that they don't have to squander their lives away to take the route of drug trafficking and other illegal means, but that through good means, for the building of factories, for the development of the agriculture sector, through the expansion of the tourism industry, through the growth of the manufacturing sector, that these individuals will find opportunity. They will use their creativity and they'll be able to contribute to the country while the country gives back to them. So that's what makes this thing exciting. I am very convinced, I'm quite convinced that we are going to win this next election. I'm also convinced that we cannot do it without the full and committed support of the young people. So I'm very heartened to hear from them. Always encourage, especially on the ground, to touch base, to do the fist bumps and then to bring this hope and encouragement to the young people of our country. And so I want to dedicate tonight in particular to our young people and to let them know that we are there for them, we are there with them, and we are strategizing, we are planning to make this country something that will benefit them and that will absolutely make them live better lives and contribute a lot more to our society. So I want to say good night to everyone who've been with us for the night, and to those of you who made comments as well. It's good. We've been able to read through some of your comments, but thank you for that support. It does a lot to us when we're up there to see those comments, to see the support, to see the enthusiasm. Just want to say God bless everyone, and we look forward to doing it again for you next week.
Yeah, so just it's a good way to just end that. Thanks for that, Doc. But a good way to end is to read two comments there. One previously, one person say CARICOM is divided; they only care about themselves, and it's only anti-Kamala. It look like it's about the people. But here's an interesting one to put the curtain down on our program tonight. We need to continue energizing the youth because the population shift continues, and soon the youthful numbers will outweigh the elderly. They need to be more involved on a civic level to improve the electorate's understanding of current affairs in our beloved Dominica. What a nice way to end it. Doc, let me thank you and thank the many persons who have been involved and viewing and commenting and making contributions to this program. Until next time, we say God bless. Have a good night.
Peace. Good night.
Peace.